Hi, everybody. Today I have a very special guest. I have Jayne Brassington on the call with me today. Hi, Jayne. Uh,
Hello.
Jayne
Blue.
is not only, and Blue as well, thank you for being there. Jayne is not only a wonderful chiropractor, she has been a great friend of mine during many, many years because we went to university together many moons ago at RMIT in Melbourne. Jayne has been in the UK now for quite some time and actually working up in Scotland. She has 3 practices up there. But my call today was actually to talk to Jayne, not about a wonderful chiropractor that she is, but also some of the other great things that she has done. Jayne studied an MBA, what was it, 4 years ago now? Or when did
Yeah, about 4 years. Yeah,
about
yeah.
4 years ago. And so I don't think there's many chiropractors out there who have done an MBA. So Jayne, where did it all start from you? You graduated from Melbourne, you worked there for a while, and how did you get to the UK?
Kaz, who was working with Vismaya in Amsterdam, and I was treating Vismaya's family in Melbourne. And he came for an appointment as well with Finn when he was really wee. Anyway, he was looking for an associate and had suggested that might be something that I'd be interested in doing. He needed some time off for some locuming, and so did Kaz. So, yeah, went over to Amsterdam, worked for about 3 years, which was fab as an associate. But I had already started my DICCP through New Zealand College of Chiropractic. So I had done 1 year, and then I contacted, it was run by Palmer, and I'd contacted them, and they said I could continue doing it in the States if I lived in Amsterdam.
Sorry, the DICCP is the pediatrics.
Is the pediatrics. I diplomate in international pediatrics, clinical pediatrics and pregnancy. So I'd already kind of started it, and I didn't really want to waste because it was hard work to do the first year and travel and work at the same time. So it was Melbourne, New Zealand, and then I went to Amsterdam, and then ended up doing it in America. So once a month I was going to the States to finish this for 2 years. So that was hugely intense, and obviously financially a big hit. But I was an associate, and you know what, you do it. And when you don't have a practice to run, it's a really good opportunity to get more proper study under your belt. So I decided that Scotland might be a good idea. So moved here. There were no associate jobs going, and I thought, you know what, I'd had a practice in Australia anyway, so I thought, you know, I might as well have my own again. And it was a big risk to go through that during a great financial crisis, but I didn't really have much of a choice. So no one was employing, and so what do? You know, like, I've got these skills. So I set the board exam here, which was quite arduous and tough. So I'm pretty sick of sitting exams by this stage, but anyway, that was fine. Sat that, and I then had my first practice in Dundee, which was quite a city that was struggling financially at the time. So I had a lot of naysayers as to what I was doing.
Like, do you regret opening your own practice in that period of time and in that financial situation?
Well, you know what they say, invention, you know, what is it? Oh, don't let a good crisis go to waste. And then there's the other one, like, mother of all invention. Mother of all invention is, you know, necessity is mother of all invention. I didn't have a choice. Yeah. And it's interesting as a woman that there's hardly any women. When you look at how many women own practices, it's almost zero. So you hardly get any support. This is before, you know, because this is like 11 years ago now. Any kind of, you know, women in chiropractic, all that kind of stuff. Like, I'm delighted it's there now, but that never existed. It was all that. And a lot of people that I had spoken to, that I had either worked for or met at seminars and so on, had just done it not on a whim, but just because it seemed to work for them. There was nothing behind it. Does that make sense? Like, people kind of fumbling in the dark about things. And then, you know, you just hear about PVA or how many patient visits you're meant to have, or how many new patients, but it wasn't really about, was the business in profit, and can you sustain a CA? How do you trade CAs? You know, all those kind of really fundamental things. So
was that then your lead into doing the MBA? Was that where all the thoughts started to come forward?
Well, kind of, yeah. I was fumbling around myself, and I was trying to get some information, and it just wasn't, the associations couldn't help, because they just don't have the resources for that kind of thing. And then you'd kind of find yourself in a meeting with someone that didn't really that could have taken advantage of you. You come out and you don't even know if you're getting taken advantage of or not. So you're like, oh, should I take that advice or not? So that was part. But no, the sealant for me was I went to South by Southwest, and the Scottish government gave me a wee grant that added, I still had to pay for some of it. But I was doing a talk on wellness in the music industry.
Wow.
For people to which was very fun. And
I can imagine. And more at South by Southwest Festival. Wow. Okay. I'll go.
Yeah. Well, we did have a great turnout. I think I had about 10 or 12 people there. It didn't matter. It helped. Anyway, so in part of it, there's a thing called you've got the film aspect to it, then you have the interactive, and then you have the music. And the interactive is really interesting. That's where Twitter launched. That's where Getty Images launched. There was a thing called Triage, which was an app, and it was a medical app. And I was looking at it and I was like, could I use that in practice? Does that work? How does that take away from us as people delivering care versus just someone trying to, Google what's wrong with them? Because that was really starting to happen. Patients were coming in saying, I've got these problems. I've Googled it. I think I've got sciatica. And it's like, okay, let's sit you down and actually go through it and give you a diagnosis rather than Dr. Google. And I was talking to the guy about it, and he's like, you know what, we just invented this because we saw that there was a hollow market. We did our market research, and then there was a need for it. And we're techies. So we invented this. We don't really know how much it works. The FDA at the time didn't have anything to approve apps or not, so it was a bit of a cowboy market. So you could just do it. And then I thought, you know what? There's a bunch of people making this stuff for us that isn't us. So what what would make sense? And the guy's like, go and do an MBA. And I was like, why would I do an MBA? Because you're a business and you need to know how to do it. And if you're interested in this stuff, then you should go and do it.
So,
and
Jayne,
I was
just
like,
before you explain this, can you just give us a quick little thing what an MBA consists of?
Okay, so an MBA is a Master's in Business Administration. So it is an academic degree. It's not a seminar on how to make your first million. It's nothing like that. It is about all the different aspects of running a business. So economics, micro and macro, ethics, sustainability. And sustainability means if you have a business, how are you going to sustain it through COVID? How are you going to sustain it through a change in regulation? How are you going to sustain it when the markets change, great financial crisis? And leadership was a big part of it as well. I did the executive one, which means stream, which means I can work as a non-executive director on boards. What that means is that you can make decisions for companies. So that's really important as well. So it's not just about running it, it's about being able to oversee things. And in that stream, you had to have done a postgraduate before in the master's. So that's where the pediatrics was helpful, but it showed that I was already an expert in something, right. And it goes through. So that's how
it's a 2-year course, no?
It's 3 years part-time. 3 years, yeah. But they say it's part-time, but it's not. It's
very intense.
It's full on. So, we did financial accounting. That was part of it. So I can do my own P&L statements. I can buy and sell practices or other businesses, that kind of thing. Just going through and seeing where the strengths and weaknesses are, basically.
And so now, as a chiro with an MBA, how does that change your day-to-day life? Like, what does a chiro with an MBA do?
I do a lot of management. It does help a lot with the 3 practices because they're all very different. They all have very different personalities. And that's part of my business model. I'm able to do that, right? So I'm able to step back and have a look and see how things formulate, and then figure out how I am as a director. So it takes the stress out of things a lot more because I'm able to see where my holes are. If I need to get someone else in who's better qualified than me for something, and I can have a much better and robust conversation with them about that stuff. Right. What I learned very quickly in the MBA is charities and third sector, they're businesses. Everything's a business. It doesn't mean if it's non-for-profit, it's still a business. You still have to make sure that you can keep your doors open for people. Like your job as a chiro is to make sure people can come and see you. So you have to make sure you're doing your regulation work. You're the best you can be delivering your service. You're ethical. All these things. That is business. Does that make sense? Whereas I think we've been too much focused on looking at turnover rather than what you do with that turnover. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
So I've been involved with business research quite a bit. I've been doing some consulting for the House of Lords for small business. I'm very interested in small businesses. We as chiropractors survive on income from people who work in small businesses.
Definitely do.
We get a few people from big businesses. We have insurers that will third-party payers, but the majority, if you ever do your demographics, it's small businesses that come to see us. So we need to support them. We need to have a community for that. So yeah, that's where that kind of lays. So I'd like to probably get a bit more involved in the chiropractic profession to help people sustain their businesses and figure out what is going on and how to do it.
And now, Jayne, you know, like in this MBA, you studied, like you said, crisis management, this sort of thing. And we've now just been through a crisis. So have you found that the things that you had learned before them, was that extremely helpful for you right now going through this change that we've just had? Or how have you, what's been particularly different about your practice just from your expertise?
I would say definitely don't get me wrong, there's still a stress element. Absolutely. Oh, yeah. I'm not just cruising through. I'm not just like, we'll be cool. You know, like there's definitely my stress though. And I said this right at the start of it is I want to make sure everybody who is with us stays with us at the outside. So we're not through it yet. We're probably looking in another 6 to 12 months and then I'll do an analysis. So I'm able to, this is the thing, I'm able to analyze at any step and I'm able to pivot. So one of the things I was involved in, which you and I first got talking about just recently, was trying to get people into more digital work. So breaking it down into what value does a chiropractor hold without their hands? And that was one of the things I had said to myself doing an MBA. If I lose my hands, it sounds quite aggressive and violent, but if I do lose my hands, what can I do? How can I be helpful? And what can I offer the world still? If I was to lose my hands as a chiropractor, who then am I? Am I still a chiropractor? Who am I? So I think, and what services can you provide? So I think the MBA was really helpful to help me be a much better clinical director. I know people use that term, but it's like, are you really doing operational management? Are you really doing financial management? Are you using those terms just because we can throw them around? I guess it's, that's what's been really helpful for me to wear the different hats during this time.
And Jayne, I mean, do you still adjust or do you just manage?
I do. Yep.
Yeah.
I do.
Okay.
Yes.
And then, so Jayne, I know that, there's one thing is you're trying to help chiropractors to have an assessment of their business. Tell us a little bit about, I know you did a webinar the other day. What's some things that you're doing to try and give back to the community?
So I'm trying to help people understand that there's different aspects of running a business. So we're doing one on risk management at the moment, and that idea is very scary for people. But it shouldn't be. It should be something that you do. Your insurers shouldn't just do it.
What is risk management? What do you mean by risk management in a chiropractic office?
Okay, so a risk management should be like that instance. What do I do if I lose my hands? What happens? What if I do if I'm trying to sell my business and it falls apart? What happens if we get a pandemic? I know with us practicing in Australia, there was frequently we would have meningitis and infantile meningitis. And if that had hit your practice, what would you do? Like, what would happen? What are you doing to prevent it? What are you doing during it? And what are you doing afterwards? So just looking at all the different kinds of risks and being able to see what their priorities are. So if you live somewhere like, I don't know, Cumbria is an easy one off the top of my head in the borders between England and Scotland, they flood a lot. What happens if you have a big flood in the town? Are you prepared for that to happen? It's going to happen. Are you prepared for that? Are you prepared for one of your associates to break their foot? Like that's what happened with me.
Well, I think, I mean, it is true because we've seen right now that a pandemic can create this crisis. But I think on the reality of day-to-day crises that we have, what happens if our health gets compromised for some reason? We have to take off a few weeks, or our family, or you want to get pregnant, or you want to go on a holiday or a sabbatical. These are, I mean, it's not a risk, but it's a risk management as far as, have you managed that do you have that into account in your day?
Yeah, and what tools are used? Like there are professional tools. Companies use tools to figure this out. It's not just made up, someone going, you know, that's a good idea, that's a good idea. There's actually ways and means of doing that. And our profession does not have those things. We have them for things like radiography, right? You take a radiograph of someone and you go through systems, right? And you learn how to diagnose. It's the same kind of aspect to it. And we get thrown things like, it's too reactive rather than, you know, we should be going through those motions. So it takes a lot of stress off. So even just knowing when you should employ an associate, not just because you think that it looks good to have an associate, like when should you? It's that what's going to happen for them? How are you managing that to be able to make sure that you both have a livelihood that comes from that? And it's not going to be smooth sailing. So just forget that's going to happen.
I think it's a great time to put this into place as well, Jayne, because I don't know for you or I'm sure for everybody else as well, sitting back and staying at home and then having that moment to actually look at your business. And then it's like, okay, how do I take that step back in? And who's coming in that step with me and how I'm going to do it? You know, we never really get that moment, only at the beginning when you start a business. But I suppose your drive a lot is a financial drive just to get anybody in the door, you know. But now that we have a business and we've actually stopped for 6 weeks or 8 weeks or however long people have had to stop, it's a good time to reflect on things that we have and ask why do we have them, and is it necessary, or what's their purpose, you know?
And putting the onus back on the owner as well and saying, you know, think about it. Think about what you're constructing. Like, you're not just haphazard. There's things there. What's your short-term, medium, long-term goals? You don't have to answer those things automatically, but you are a leader, and you're a leader in the community. And this is where a lot of people get into trouble with regulators, when they stop being that leader, you know, like they compromise the profession and it cheapens it. But we have to do that with our businesses as well. We don't want to be, I don't know, there's no reason why our doors should shut, you know, like, so how do we do that? And if we don't take that step and be robust in that, like other companies do, then, you know, we're going to fall apart a little bit. It's interesting to see something like, you know, your local cafe versus Starbucks. Do you have a cafe down in the corner that you love, and they do make, you know, they're good coffee, and you like to go there, but then Starbucks is going to open quicker during the financial, well, during this kind of, I'm going to say financial crisis, COVID pandemic, because they have these structures in place, and they can, because they're a big business, but they didn't start that way. They started small with an idea. So you don't have to be the person that sees 100 patients a week. You could see 10 if it satisfies you. You could see 200. It doesn't matter. It's just making sure you can sustain what it is that you're trying to do.
You're trying to do.
Yeah. And to quote the great Karen Jaff, you know, swim your own race. But you know, it's important, and there shouldn't be any judgment with that. But you should understand what it is that you're trying to achieve within your own business, I think.
Jayne, thank you so much for your insight. Thank you so much for your business mind and that other vision. That it's true that we learn about anatomy, we learn about radiography, we learn about technique, but we learn nothing about what it is to own a business. And we are basically all small business owners. I would say 90% of the chiropractic population are small business owners, you know? So I feel
and we rely on them within our community too. That interplay. So,
Jayne, thank you so much. And